Black Lives Matter. It's what you see everywhere you look these days. People have been protesting against police brutality and racism all over the United States for days, and it still doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. People from different racial backgrounds are finally learning to stand by each other and defend each other from oppressors. George Floyd, an African American who was killed by the police, by mistake as they say, during an arrest in Minneapolis on May 25th, 2020. George Floyd's death was very impactful, many Americans. In this video we're going to explore 7 things that, in my opinion, are wrong about this whole subject, and some of them may be just surprising for you. Number 7. George Floyd was not murdered because of his skin color. Not because he was black, but rather because he was not white. For a lot of people, those policemen did not seem to treat him like a human being. Authorities cited pre-existing heart condition as the cause of death, and a lot of people believe that asphyxiation likely contributed to his death as well.
His cause of death medically was mechanical asphyxiation.
As shown in the video, the victim may have stayed under that policeman's knee for too long, which was enough to complicate his condition, and eventually lead to his death. The right motive to protest, in this case, is against the way in which he was killed, which is considered by many to be degrading, indignified, and utterly disgraceful. Think about it. If it was anyone else from a different race who happened to die under the knee of a policeman, I assume the same thing would have happened, and people would have been protesting against it. In an ideal world, people should protest about any human being's death like that, especially by a body whose main responsibility is protecting civilians. Number 6. Police brutality is not necessarily new to Americans. The 1992 Los Angeles riot/uprising were a series of riots and civil disturbances that occurred in Los Angeles in 1992. Unrest began in south-central Los Angeles on April 29th, about this same time of the year, after 4 LAPD officers were acquitted for usage of excessive force in the arrest and beating of another African-American, Rodney King, which was again videotaped and went viral on TV. The rioting took place in several areas in Los Angeles metropolitan area, and thousands of people rioted over a 6-day period following the announcement of the verdict. Amadou Diallo is a 23-year-old Guinean immigrant. Another case of police brutality, which happened again in February 1999, was shot and killed by 4 New York City Police Department officers. The officers fired a combined total of 41 shots outside his apartment. Another case is Seambell, who was shot in New York City back in 2006. And another case of Oscar Grant, who was another 22-year-old African-American who was killed in the early morning hours of New Year's Day, 2009, by bar police in Oakland.
These people are angry, and they have every right to be.
Number 5. Some people may have overreacted to this whole thing. In my honest opinion, of course, it's their God-given right to protest and stand up for their rights, but there were a lot of mobs and there was a lot of vandalism and looting as well. They're clashing with police officers, hurting each other, injuring each other, which all makes chaos intensify and fuels division among Americans. Those should not be allowed to take part in the peaceful marches, in the peaceful protests, because that's not what people are there for. They're not interested in justice, their only interest is looting, which is a crime in itself. Number 4. Media coverage is biased and incoherent. This could be seen all across the news titles, broadcast footage, and published articles. Some news channels say that a black man dies, emphasizing his color, while others say that he was murdered, emphasizing the act. Others say policemen murder an African American, as if those policemen intended to kill him, which is not an excuse anyway, while others say African-American falls victim to police brutality, which is, if you ask me, the right one. News channels are trying to keep this as objective as they can possibly keep it, but let me assure you, there is no way this can be spoken of without being subjective. Some media outlets are villainizing cops while others accuse civilians. The media could empower the people if they could agree on what to say and how to say it.
That's because the media sucks.
Number 3. Racism is not black. Many other races are affected, as shown in these statistics. This is no-brainer actually. If you want to try and deny this, good luck. I have seen how American citizens from Chinese, Indian, or Arab or Persian origins are treated, either by the authorities or by other people who think the whiteness of their skin gives them the right to be racist. America was originally inhabited by people who are not white, and white people came here as immigrants, just like everybody else. And the rest is history. A history of blood and violence, of course. We all know about that. We all remember the story of the young teenager Zachary Hammond who was gunned down by the police at the age of 19. Statistics show that African Americans are the ones affected the most by police brutality. But that, in my personal opinion, is because there has been a lot of focus on African Americans and not everybody's talking a lot about, Indians. Not a lot of people are protesting.
You fucking packy? Go back to fucking India.
There are people.
Number 2. The way authorities are handling this whole thing is wrong, in my honest opinion. If you want to end this, you may need to side with the people, because justice is whatever the majority calls for. I was very happy when I heard Donald Trump talk about justice.
My administration is fully committed that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain.
But I want to ask, how are you going to ensure justice for George Floyd's family, Mr. President?
I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers, military personnel, and law enforcement officers.
Oh crap. Clashing with people is not how you are going to convince them to stop protesting. You simply cannot answer protests against police brutality with more police brutality.
These people are angry, and they have every right to be.
Before we go to number 1, if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. If you disagree with the content of the video, please leave me a comment or dislike the video. Number 1. The worst thing about everything that is going on currently in the United States is that, and don't hate me for saying this, people are losing the point. And instead of protesting against the murder of George Floyd, who is unfortunately gone and nothing can bring him back, may his soul rest in peace. Protests should not be personalized. It should not be about a person, but about a cause. This is not only about Floyd and his family, it is also about every American who was a victim of police brutality, in any way, shape, or form. And society should make sure that George Floyd is the last victim of this sort of incidents. Society should take a closer look at its youth and make sure they have the best education and a job and a house, and keep them away from anything that can lead them to being victims of such incidents. Make George the last victim. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time in another video. Please don't forget to leave me your thoughts in the comments down below.